All right. Thank you so much for everyone being here today. We are joined by Amber Merkens, who is the lead herbalist at the Alchemist Kitchen. We're going to just get started with a really quick, easy opening question. Amber, how did you become an herbalist? What was your journey?
That sounds like an easy question, but it's very much a spiraling path, I feel like. um, but well, let's see. When I think about my journey into herbalism, I feel like immediately I think of that starting in childhood, and I was very much connected to the plants around me. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and I have a lot of memories of um, being in the forest, eating wood sorrel, eating salmon berries, making potions of sorts, and that was just a time where I didn't know, what I was doing. I was just kind of in touch with my natural relationship to the more than human world. So communication with plants, I feel like, started then. But then fast forward, when I started studying herbalism, it was when I became a postpartum doula. And that was a little over 10 years ago. And I studied with Demetria Clark and worked with herbs with new parents, primarily with skin healing, sitz baths, and nourishing infusions to help calm new mothers and promote breast milk production and tone the uterus after birth. And I worked with that for a long time. And then I would say to make a long story short, I dealt with some of my own health issues that came up after like some tremendous burnout and feeling older than my age and looking for ways to come back into my vitality. And I think part of that was also after having my second child and not taking care of myself in ways. And so at that time, I really got into digging a little bit deeper, and I got into more studies of folk herbalism and using nourishing infusions on a regular basis, which are like therapeutic strength teas. And that really kind of shifted everything for me. And at that same time, my daughter was very young, and she started, as we went on walks, talking to the trees and the plants that we would pass. And that spurred something in me, like a very strong remembrance of my connection to the plant world. And I felt like a very strong calling to deepen that connection and also help other people do the same and kind of remember the parts of ourselves that are in relationship to plants. And so then I started more advanced clinical herbalism studies and through the Arbor Vitae School of Traditional Herbalism, and got more into phytochemistry and Chinese and Ayurvedic herbalism as well as Western. And I have some teachers of Native American descent as well. And just learning how to see patterns in the body as an ecosystem and as it relates to the wider ecosystems that we're part of, and kind of becoming a matchmaker for people, their own pictures, like their unique pictures of what is in balance, out of balance, and what plants can help them, you know, find more balance and find and nourish them, or help release what needs to be released. So yeah, and I just love it. I love working with people. I find it endlessly fascinating, and both plants and people. And yeah, that's kind of my little.
And what has been your path to the Alchemist Kitchen, working with us and working with our clientele?
Yeah, so I loved working at the Alchemist Kitchen. I came to the Alchemist Kitchen kind of through a conversation that I had with someone who knew the owners and the manager. That was basically me being very excited about about plants, and talking about how much I love inspiring people to learn more. And so, and I was also wanting to work more as an herbalist outside of just my own practice. So the Alchemist Kitchen at the time was looking for an herbalist to come on staff, and I'm there in person a couple of days a week, and I also do consults through Alchemist Kitchen. I'm there on Mondays and Wednesdays usually, and I love talking to people, hearing people's stories. I like accessing a more sort of intuitive side of my practice, because I'm speaking to people often rather quickly and as they're passing through. And that's different from when I have consults with people that last, that are an hour and a half to 2 hours, and we get very detailed into their lives and their medical histories and all this. But and then formulas I create for them reflect that. But when I'm at the Alchemist Kitchen, we don't get to go as deep, but there's so much that we can do at that point, wherever a person is when they come in. And so I help direct them to products as well as bulk herbs, and sometimes teach them how to make a preparation of a strong herbal infusion or a decoction or a syrup, and that they can make themselves at home. I do custom tea blends for people. They're often coming in. Right now, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of feelings of the heart being under stress, and a lot of digestive issues, and people having trouble sleeping. And plants, there's a lot that that can be done with plant allies, essentially, in those realms. They kind of shine with the nervous system in particular, I would say, but in all areas.
Yeah, I was going to say, working at the Alchemist Kitchen, I'm sure your ability to recommend products is a little more immediate because we have so many on the shelf. What is your go-to favorite recommendation for someone who walks in and is just looking for a first herb to try?
Well, I would say it's different. I can't say there's one for everybody, because that's part of like the context of herbalism is, getting a little more specific with each person. But I would say that an herb that I go to often in the bulk area is skullcap. And that is really wonderful for this kind of overactive mind and tension in the muscles, and kind of draining the energy down, calming the nervous system. And it often will go into a tea blend. And mushrooms often come up in the mushroom company products, and specifically reishi is one of my favorites, and tremendous immune support and heart shen soothing medicinal mushroom.
And also, it's freezing out in New York City. Do you have any favorite immunity boosting, cold fighting health herbs that you recommend?
Yeah. Absolutely. Astragalus. Astragalus root is one of my favorites, which I often put into into my broth. So bone broth for me, and for some of my clients who prefer not to eat animal products, I often recommend seaweed broths. But broths in the winter are very helpful and warming and yin nourishing, like moistening, and tons of healthy fats and minerals. And I put medicinal herbs into that. So astragalus is one that I use. We sell it in a powder at the Alchemist Kitchen elixir bar, and you can put it in as a powder. It's also sold sometimes as these like tongue depressor looking slices, and you can throw a handful in. It's very supportive of the protective energy of the body. It's immune regulating, and also just protective against pathogens, and what in Chinese medicine we call the wei qi, which is like the protective qi in the body. It's also very mild tasting, so I can put it in things. I also sometimes put it in the rice water when I'm making rice. I can put it in things and my kids don't notice. So that's a nice one. It's also in our immune elixir, I believe at the elixir bar, and which is delicious, by the way, and also has elderberry, and elderberry is another, of course, immune star. I make huge batches of elderberry syrup. I know not everybody wants to make their own stuff, so we also do carry elderberry syrup, and one that has medicinal mushrooms in it as well, which is really nice. It tastes great. Not all, herbal remedies are going to taste great, and elderberry is one that does, so that's nice. And also warming herbs to get your circulation going and keep like your digestive fire that tends to get sluggish in the winter. You're eating heavy foods and you're not moving around as much, and things start to slow down. And things like ginger and cardamom and turmeric and things in a chai are excellent winter tonics, and excellent also in terms of immune health. But yeah, one of my other favorites at the Alchemist Kitchen is the Anima Mundi chai, and the Dirty Rose chai. It's so good. It has rose in it, which is just a really nice touch. And rose is cooling, But with the warming herbs, it's nice. It's a nice balance, and it's also really heart opening. And I like that a lot. And we're coming into February and our mother month of love. Heart opening things are a nice thing to have in your routine. I'm drinking rose tea right now, by the way.
Oh, perfect. No, that was my next question. What are your daily herbal routines, or do you have any daily practices?
Well, they kind of change, the herbs change, but my routines tend to stay pretty similar. I will usually have a tincture blend that I take every day. And a tincture is an herbal extract that's extracted with alcohol and water, and it's very convenient. It's like a concentrate that you can either put directly on your tongue. I put it in a little bit of water in the morning. Sometimes I put it in my water bottle for the day to just sip throughout the day. And I almost always drink an overnight infusion. And that is something that, like I said before, it kind of shifted things for me and my health. And I tend to keep it in my rotation of self-care because I feel like it's so effective. Usually I'm using very nutrient dense herbs in those. An overnight infusion is great for extracting minerals from plants, breaking down the cell wall with lots of time to infuse things like nettles and red clover and red raspberry. I love an overnight infusion of hibiscus, which seems like a summertime herb because it's very cooling, but I'll add ginger or cinnamon in the winter, and it's so hydrating and so high in vitamin C that I love it. And my body loves it. And wonderful for the heart, excellent for hormone balancing, and yeah. So that's one of my daily practices. Broth in the winter is for sure an almost daily practice that I consider medicine. And I'll usually do breakfast that is broth with an egg and some mushrooms and some greens. Also reishi and cordyceps are in my routine right now as a powder, and that goes in either a little bit of coffee. I do drink a little bit of coffee, or I don't know if you've ever heard of Dandy Blend, but it's a great thing for an easy drink that's similar to coffee in its like bitter profile. It's got dandelion and chicory root. It's just stir it into hot water. It feels grounding. If you're craving coffee but you don't want to drink coffee, it's a nice alternative. And you can stir your mushroom powders into it. You could put a little cardamom. You could put a little cinnamon, a little cacao. Those are some nice ways to take herbs. But yeah, daily routine. I mean, mine is pretty robust. But you know, I think that the way that that's happened too is that I just incorporate herbs into like pretty much all the things I consume. So it's not just like one thing. And it's part of habits that were already there. Like I try to build things into habits that are already there, like putting a little reishi in my coffee.
I really like that. I want to make sure that we open up the questions to the audience too. So I have some more questions, but let's take a few audience questions. So if anyone has any questions about herbs, herbalism, the history, whatever you want. Also, it can be very specific. I am recording, but I am going to edit anything too personal out. And we'll also have this up on our YouTube channel.
I have a bunch of questions, but I don't want to hog here.
No, hog away.
So, okay, a couple of things. So a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D, and I was recently reading that reishi is excellent for vitamin D deficiency and perhaps chaga. Can you talk more about how those mushrooms help to ensure, say, someone on a vegan diet is not deficient? And how quickly can either boost your vitamin D levels?
That's a really good question. I would say, so mushrooms in general are great sources of vitamin D. Yes, reishi, I believe chaga, shiitakes, excellent source of vitamin D. And actually, if you put them in the sun, if you have a situation where you can lay your shiitakes out in the sun, gill side up, for even an hour, they raises the vitamin D level by something crazy, like 100 times, or yeah. So they that's a great way. I would say if you're very vitamin D deficient, I'm not entirely sure that just taking the mushrooms are going to get your levels back up and higher. It depends on the body and depends on other things in your lifestyle as well. So I can't say a definitive answer of like, this is how long it would take. But I would recommend eating mushrooms every day. Like, I would recommend a couple handfuls of mushrooms. And so maybe like some that are typically used in culinary recipes, but also having some reishi powder, making sure that you get, or reishi also comes in those tongue depressor type strips. And you can decoct that, like simmer it on the stove and make a nice tea out of that. It's rather bitter, but I actually have people sometimes decoct it, a bunch of it, put it in ice cube trays, and then take an ice cube every day and mix it into some hot water or some soup for your little reishi dose. But also it comes in capsules. We sell capsules, we sell tinctures, and powders, which can be used in multiple ways. So I think just medicinal mushrooms and mushrooms in general are wonderful, like slow and steady support, immunomodulating, high in vitamins, really nutritive. So I think it's just like that's a nice daily practice. It's a nice thing to just have some part of your life.
I have just two questions on estrogen dominance. Is that okay?
Sure.
And then I'll shut up for a while. So estrogen dominance is like a huge problem for, I think, both women and men alike. Lots of breast cancer cases, lots of prostate issues like I've been dealing with. Is chasteberry a good herb for men to take? And I know it's good for women for balancing hormones. And what else would you recommend to help the body more effectively excrete excess estrogen?
Mm-hmm. So many ways to come at that. So, yes, estrogen estrogen dominance is an issue, and a big one, because there are so many chemicals in our environment now that are very closely mimic estrogen, but they have a stronger effect in our body. So they can bind to your estrogen receptors and cause an estrogen-like effect. And then your endogenous estrogen that's already in your body cannot bind to those receptors, right? And then recirculates through your body, or has to be filtered out. So it's a lot of work for your body. So estrogen dominance can be your own estrogen, but it can also be caused by the tremendous amount of chemicals in our water, in plastics, etc. So trying to limit the exposure is a really good first step to things like that. But then you were onto something when you're talking about how do I help my body get rid of the excess estrogen. That's liver support. And that is making sure your liver is working efficiently. And that includes, often includes bitters, bitter greens, and also bitter herbs like reishi. Wonderful liver support. And that helps your body to get rid of the excess hormones. Also, keeping things moving, right? So if you are constipated, you need to address that and be drinking more water and be addressing it in multiple ways to make sure that things are moving out of your body. But another herb to answer your question about Vitex, I believe that herbs are not, they don't have any like real gender preferences. So I think that Vitex could possibly be helpful. I think more of red clover for people with estrogen dominance. Again, a red clover, phytoestrogens, which are high in red clover, are going to bind. If you're consuming enough of them, they're going to bind to those receptors first, and they're much more gentle. So it helps to keep those stronger xenoestrogens, which are chemical based, from binding, or even your own body's estrogen from binding, which may be too strong or may be causing problems or growths, right? So those overnight infusions, red clover is a great one to do in that style. And I'll just say, do some research maybe too on saw palmetto.
Okay.
One moment for your next question. Really quick, I want to ask Shawnee's question from the chat. She just was wondering if you have any info on where to study herbalism when you're first starting out, any recommendations for books for someone who's just entering the herbalism world.
Matthew Wood's books, Rosemary Gladstar,
yes,
wonderful, easily accessible information. There are some nice classes also through Matthew Wood's website, free classes. There you go. Yes. Rosemary Gladstar. Let's see, some of my favorites.
Robin Rose Bennett.
Robin Rose Bennett, excellent. Yes, The Healing Way. The Gift of Healing Herbs is one of my favorite books.
Susan Weed.
Susan Weed, yep. Susan Weed is where I started with when I started getting into Wise Woman Way stuff. And also the American Herbalist Guild has a lot of free webinars that might be interesting. And if you're interested in Ayurvedic medicine and herbs, I would recommend Anne McIntyre. Wonderful writer, and the Ayurvedic Bible is a book she wrote it's a very small book, but packed with amazing information.
I was going to say too, we sell this book, Plant Magic, at the shop, and it's the first book I read about herbalism, and I really liked it. Very easily accessible. I don't consider myself an herbalist, but it was really a good read.
Thank you. And we sell
Thank
another
you.
book, the herbal. There's a book in our shop called The Herbal Apothecary. And I'm trying to remember the woman's name who wrote it. But it has photographs of all the plants as well, as like little monographs. Really wonderful, just to be able to see the plants as well and be able to connect with them that way.
Jenny's book, or Jenny Sensuchi's book, or Rebel's Apothecary?
Sounds like a good book.
Yeah, we sell that one too. I just linked it. Maybe it's the right one, maybe it's the wrong one.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are several really good books in the shop. Christopher Hobbs is great for medicinal mushrooms if you're wanting to go further, deeper into that.
Mm.
All right. Sorry, Garen, your other question, I cut you off.
Well, I was going to ask,
Go ahead.
do you teach what ratio of alcohol you use, as if you're making a tincture, or do you like weigh out, or do by eyeball or proportion?
Yeah, I think the place to start is the folk method.
I've heard of it.
Very effective, and I did for many years before I started. I do weigh things out and use different percentage of alcohol for different herbs, depending on what they are and what part of the plant I'm using, if I'm using roots or leaves or berries, and whether there's more mucilaginous or whether it has tannins, and there are all these things to consider, but it's also very effective, and the plants are very forgiving, and to do folk tinctures. And what that typically looks like is like filling a jar like halfway full, maybe 3/4 of the way full with dried herb, and then pouring vodka or brandy, a high proof vodka over it, and making sure it's fully submerged, and then capping it, labeling it with the date and the type of herb, and leaving it for 6 weeks, coming over, shaking it every day, bringing your intention of healing and asking for the plant's medicine. I think that's a very good thing to practice, that reciprocity and relationship with the plant. And then you can open it and check to make sure everything's still submerged. You can tamp it down with a chopstick. You might have to top it up after the herbs absorb the alcohol. If you're using fresh plants, you want to chop it up really, really fine. You might even blend it with a little bit of the alcohol in a blender. Some people don't like to do that. It's nice to just do it by hand as well, but if you want it a little bit stronger, you can use a blender. But you would fill your jar and really like stuff it with the plant material and really try and chop it as finely as you can so that there's the most surface area available. And then again, you can just use the alcohol that you can get.
Thank you.
I have a few questions about that also. Does it matter, like the new moon and the full moon? Like, do you want to begin with the new moon or the full moon and end at that time too?
Yeah.
Does it matter?
Yeah. I mean, I think it matters to a lot of people. And I think if it matters, I think it's a really nice way to do it, to connect to that. And doing it at the new moon is a nice time of setting intentions and straining it on a full moon when it's come to fullness, essentially, when that's a nice time to strain it. Or you could do it if you wanted on another new moon. There's as many ways to do it as there are like different people. But I think that that's one way that has been done traditionally, and people get more or less into it depending on their connection to that aspect of healing. And and I'll also go back, Janet, and just say that if you're tincturing roots or like really hard plant material, I would go as high of alcohol percentage as you can get.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a certain vodka or brandy that you recommend? Like, I mean, I would assume that a higher quality vodka or brandy is going to be better in terms of extracting the herb.
Yeah, I mean, I like vodka because it doesn't really have it doesn't have much of a flavor.
Wow.
So really the herb itself comes out. But brandy, what's that brand? EO, I feel like is the one that I used to use. Something high quality is nice. You want to like have the best quality in your medicine that you're making. And organic is nice. But also it's you just want to do what you can, you know what I mean? Like if you can't afford that, then I would recommend you still do it.
And related to that, you were talking earlier about dried herbs versus fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Where can one purchase organic or wild-crafted fresh herbs locally here in New York? And do you think that tinctures made with dried herbs are far less potent than tinctures made with fresh herbs?
So in New York, there are some, you can get them at farmers markets sometimes. There are herbal CSAs that you can join. I know Sawmill Farm has an herbal CSA. It's sometimes hard to get fresh in the city. There's an organization called the Herbal Underground that you can look up, and sometimes they host medicine making events where they bring fresh herbs from a farm that they're partnered with in Pennsylvania, I believe, or maybe they're partnered with more than one, but they bring fresh herbs. Everybody makes tinctures together, and you can bring some home, and they donate a lot of the medicine that's made at those events. And then we, if there's leftover, you can also purchase from them.
But yeah, I'm keeping
As far as fresh versus dried, there are so many opinions about that, and certain plants do better fresh than others. Like fresh herbs that have a lot of aromatic quality, essential oils, it can be really nice to do fresh. But that being said, the first tincture I made was dried Tulsi tincture, and it was so excellent. It's still like, I feel like it just turned out one of the most effective tinctures, as effective as any I make now. It just was, there's so much that also just depends on where you get it. Like your sourcing always matters. There could be dried herbs that are beautifully dried and ones that are brown and lifeless. So you got to use your own senses also to assess the vitality of the plant.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience?
I have more. So this is kind of an odd one. I don't know how many people are dealing with this, but receding gums. In your opinion, is it possible to grow back gum tissue using medicinal herbs? And if yes, which herbs would you recommend?
I do think it's possible to regenerate tissue in general. And I think that you might want to think about some like skin healing herbs in like a mouthwash or tincture that you water down with water to make a mouthwash, which could be like calendula and comfrey come to mind. Also, you want to think about like antimicrobial herbs, like golden seal, but I would be careful with golden seal because it's over harvested, but just make sure your sourcing is good. Oregon grapefruit. It kind of, and also marshmallow is nice for like moistening the mouth. With the mouth, I feel like it needs to be a combination of things to address many things that might be going on. It might need like more of a consult, but I know that the microbiome of the mouth is important with the receding gums and addressing that, and it might also like involve other things or probiotics or looking at things you're eating or things like that. So but let's see. Leslie Alexander is an herbalist who specializes in dental health, and I think she also has some resources online that you might want to check out. Banyan Botanicals might have a good mouthwash. yeah, there was another really good mouthwash that I had at one point.
I know that Richard Schultz on herbdoc.com has one too that I have here. I've been using it, and it's got like everything in there.
Okay.
Everything herbal.
And have you noticed any relief or any changes, or not really?
I mean, I haven't been consistent, which is on me. And I think I know I have like a chronic infection. So that's something else. But I've heard that periodontal disease in general, there's like an infection, like a systemic infection there, right? And it's like, you're not going to fix the gums until you deal with that first.
Exactly. So it's like root cause, and that's where it gets tricky sometimes, like with treating herbs, like in a way, like in an allopathic way, like, okay, I have this symptom, what herb is good for that?
Yeah.
It's can be hit or miss like that. So, but can be extremely effective if you're going a little further into finding root causes, and also just seeing what's going on in your body, because your body with receding gums might be very different from someone else's body with receding gums, and that would mean different herbs, right? So
thank you.
Can you speak to, Amber, on your expertise in the fertility field?
Sure. So, I mean, that's just a place where I focus a lot of my energy. I got into, herbalism kind of because of the perinatal time, and figuring out how to regain health and vitality after pregnancy and birth. But then also, I don't know about anyone else here with a uterus, but if you go to a doctor with concerns about your menstrual cycle, more often than not, I would say there's only one tool in the toolbox, and it's to regulate your hormones with hormonal birth control. And I think that is something that I'm trying to help people find more options, because there are so many actually in traditional medicine and in herbalism. Women have been working with plants since the beginning of our time on the planet, from what we know in every culture, to balance their hormones and increase fertility or decrease fertility, or enhance milk supply, or all these things that there are constituents in plants that really benefit people in that way, and have evolved with our bodies. And there's so many ways. I mean, I really work from like a nourishing perspective, nourishment of deep essence in Chinese medicine called Jing, in Ayurveda called Ojas, just vitality. We describe the life force. When that is depleted, our fertility is affected, and that is that matters, not just from the perspective of wanting to have a baby. Say, it's also like extremely essential to overall health. So yeah, I guess I am pretty passionate just about that area of health and how to support deeper health in many ways, through working with fertility, through balancing menstrual cycle, through supporting the perinatal time, and menopause changes that are natural and happen for a reason, and I don't think should be just shut down. Yeah.
Any last questions from the audience? And hopefully we'll have Amber back more regularly on the virtual platform, and also she's available in the store, as she said. But any last questions before I close this out?
Thank you. Really appreciate your time and your knowledge. Thanks for sharing and all the information.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. It's really nice to, have some community with the Alchemist Kitchen, and I hope to see you there. And I also, through the Alchemist Kitchen website, you can book a free 10-minute consult if you have quick questions about a certain herb or a certain thing that's not too complicated. Or you can also, if you can book full consults through them as well.
Okay.
If you want to go a little deeper, I'm here for you.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Janet.
I was just going to ask, for hypertension, high blood pressure, I'd like to stop taking I'm on some lisinopril, and years ago where I worked, I used to make a tea with the dandelion and I think hawthorn, and it used to, be pretty good. And I'm just wondering, I didn't have blood pressure problems. And then a staff member came in, what's that smell? And they forbade me from making the tea I had every afternoon. Now I'm starting to wonder I should have gone back to it.
Who forbade you from the tea?
Well, I was working at a medical outpatient clinic for methadone, and I enjoyed having my little dandelion tea every afternoon, and and I used to go for checkups. My blood pressure was fine. So,
and do you feel like after you stopped drinking that tea regularly, then you started to develop
I think so. I think it kept me healthy.
Hawthorn is an excellent circulatory remedy, and is definitely lowering blood pressure. So it's something that as herbalists we are careful with when somebody's on a blood pressure medication, because it can bring it too low. Right. So it is definitely makes sense that hawthorn and dandelion is a nice combo for you. I would just be aware that you want to go slow and probably work with a practitioner if you're trying to come down off of the pharmaceuticals.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Because
I also, if I didn't have hawthorn, I had chamomile. That also worked pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Well, right. So nervines, which are working with the nervous system and calming the nervous system, even if they're not directly like circulatory herbs or with an affinity for the heart, they can have an effect on the heart, right? Because lowering your stress levels and calming your nervous system has an effect on your circulation and your blood pressure.
You're right. Thank you.
You can come at it right from like maybe another angle. yeah, dandelion and chamomile. I wouldn't, I would ask your doctor, but I don't think are typically contraindicated for someone on.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
One question from JP is, can you say what's good for sluggish liver and or kidneys?
Dandelion.
The cure-all.
Yeah, dandelion is a gentle, wonderful liver herb, especially if it's like that sluggish pattern. Yeah, Garen, milk thistle is nice. Milk thistle is also more regenerative, so it's great when there's been damage to the liver. Kidneys are kind of different. If you mean sluggish, like water retention, is that what you're talking about? Okay. Liver. Yeah. So just, helping the liver. Bitter herbs also in general are going to be a great ally for the liver. And you can also do that in foods as well. And dandelion greens, not just as a tea, but eating dandelion greens, watercress, chard, things like that. Very supportive of the liver.
Yeah, Amber, so my last question to close this out is something that I like to ask all our practitioners because it's always different, but what does wellness mean to you?
Well, to me personally, I think it means feeling the vital life force flowing easily. Not feeling like it's blocked in some way. Feeling like that the mind and the body are are in communication. Those are things for me that make me feel well. But I think that that's a different thing for everyone. And yeah, that's what I would say in a nutshell, I guess.
Thank you so much, Amber, for being here with us tonight, and for everybody on the Zoom. I'm going to post this to YouTube so you can rewatch, share with friends, and we'll hopefully have Amber back soon.